Hi, good evening, everybody. I believe Greg Montez with the Parks Department is going to say a few opening words.
Thank you, Claire. Good evening, everyone. As Claire mentioned, I'm Gregory Montes with the Parks and Recreation Department. And I'm serving as the project manager for the Zilker Park Vision Plan. I want to thank everyone for dedicating some time for tonight's meeting as we take the next step in our planning process. Tonight, our team is really excited to share the 3 park concepts that have been developed via community input collected thus far. We certainly want to hear your continued feedback on all 3 park concepts and invite you to also participate in our survey that will be available after tonight's meeting. The survey link will be available on the project webpage, as well as public input, and as well as the recording from tonight's meeting. So just know that we are recording this meeting for everyone else that cannot attend tonight's meeting. We do have language interpretation available, and I'd at this time like to introduce Susana Pimiento to say a few words about accessing that service. Susana?
Yes, thank you to the organizers for making of this a multilingual space. If there is a Spanish-English interpretation available, so if you want to access the interpretation, click the globe icon at the bottom of your screen if you're on your computer, and you will find English or Spanish. If you are joining us from your cell phone, then go to more, and then you will find language interpretation, and then you can select your language. Gracias a los organizadores por hacer de este un evento multilingüe. Hay interpretación inglés-español. Si están en sus computadores, por favor hagan clic en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Van a ver el icono de El Mundo. Allí encontrarán los idiomas. Si nos acompañan desde sus teléfonos celulares o tabletas, por favor hagan clic en los 3 puntitos de más. Allí van a encontrar interpretación de idiomas. Escojan su idioma y no olviden presionar listo, y podrán escuchar en su idioma preferido. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Kurt Culbertson. I'm a principal with Design Workshop and the principal in charge of the consulting team that is leading the Zilker Metropolitan Park Vision planning effort. We have tonight 2 ASL interpreters, Shelby, that you can see interpreting now in the menu of attendees, and Ariel, who will be joining us later in the presentation. Also on the call tonight are 3 members of our consulting team: Jonathan Ogren of Siglo, who has been involved with the environmental inventory and analysis work; Charlie McCabe of Charlie McCabe Consulting, who is addressing management and finance related issues relative to Zilker Park; and Jonathan Mostero of Nelson Nygaard Transportation Firm, who is addressing those components of the planning effort. For tonight's agenda, there are really a number of things we want to cover. First, some Zoom housekeeping, just to make sure that everyone is up to speed on how to ask questions, find what they're looking for. Then I will take a few moments to review the project schedule and explain to you where we are in this process. We will review the community engagement from our 3rd community meetings, and then Claire Hempel will go through 3 plan concepts and discuss next steps in this process. So a number of you have already begun to ask how to use the question and answer during the meeting. As you will find, there are 2 ways that you might direct questions. One, if you can see the tab at the bottom of the screen, if you click on the Q&A buttons, that will allow you to ask questions really to the panelists, to the co-host, and to each other, and also to upvote others' questions to give priority to those as we go through. and to communicate with other panelists during the session. In order to better manage time, the team that's assembled here tonight will be answering questions both during the presentation and answer as many of the remaining questions we can get to until the end of the time is allowed. All Q&A will be available on the project website later this week. So, and you can also hit the chat button at the bottom of the screen as well. So the planning process we are engaged in began last February. As you see here, there have been a series of small group discussions, three community meetings to date, as well as some pop-up series events that took place around the city to provide a variety of ways for people to participate in this process. Tonight, we're really reaching a very important milestone. Tonight, we will reveal 3 conceptual plans for your consideration. And ultimately, the final plan, which is likely a combination of ideas contained in the 3 plans that you will see tonight, will be reviewed in community meeting number 5 in June, and eventually presented over the course of the summer. We really appreciate all of you being here. As by our count at the bottom of the screen, you can see there are 159 participants tonight. So we're really grateful for all of your attendance. And to date, we've had nearly 7,000 voices that have contributed their ideas to this planning effort, and we look forward to their further participation and discussion during the discussion tonight. The community meetings that we've held have been structured as followed. The first meeting really got to the question of goals and vision, the big ideas that might drive the plan. We think that's a very logical, important place to start to understand what's truly important to you. And then we also looked in that first session at site analysis and needs assessment from some of the background work we had done. The second meeting covered questions of programming, and by programming, we mean what kinds of activities, facilities, events, and so forth you would like to see, classes you would like to see within Zilker Park. So that's what our questions of programming. In the third meeting, we really discussed questions of design alternatives. What are the big parts and planned options that we want to consider and get your consideration tonight? As you see, we will be discussing park plan options. And our 5th community meeting, we hope to arrive at one preferred plan, perhaps with some further follow-up questions to you, and then a robust discussion about implementation strategy and some broader policy management issues as well. So at community meeting number 3, we were fortunate to have 109 people participate by Zoom. That number has grown tonight, 6 through Facebook Live, and 86 people that participated according to the live survey results. The results of the community survey number 4 that you see here, we had 955 participants, a great cross-section of the Austin population, both in terms of age and through race and ethnic composition. We know that we have additional work to do engaging communities of color, and we'll continue that effort with the next round of small group discussions that we're holding in March. We also want to make sure that we have geographic representation for participation. You can see here where the different zip codes, council districts that people responded from. Again, as you might expect, those areas closest to Zilker Park tended to have more correspondence, but we continue to have participation from throughout the city, and we'll continue to reach out to everyone to further increase participation. As you might imagine, and we're certain the same will be seen tonight, there are a wide variety of individual comments that come through in the chat and the Q&A feature and with your questions. Oftentimes those comments are conflicting questions about how much parking should be accommodated, about large events, about how nature is found within the park, a whole range of questions. And so working through those conflicts through this community engagement process is a big part of what we want to try to accomplish. Tonight, as in past meetings, we will be using Mentimeter as we did in our previous two meetings. And if you're using your smartphone or your computer, if you would please visit www.menti.com, as you see in the image on the left. And then as in the image, the second image, input the numbers 14655737 when the prompt comes up, right? And then hit submit. Then as our questions come up to you, right, you will be prompted and you'll have the opportunity to respond to the questions that are put to you. All of the questions that we will ask you tonight, as well as this presentation and supporting materials, will be available on the project website until the end of March. So if you have friends, family that have not been able to attend tonight, they too can participate in the process by accessing this survey through the end of March. So now I'm going to lead you through a few questions. First, let's have a warm-up question. Warm-up being an intended pun. What are you most looking forward to this spring? Spring weather, blue bonnets and other flowers, wildflowers, maybe March Madness, spring break, South by Southwest festivals. So you can see here how the process works. So let's give this a few more minutes. By my count, we should have about up to about 150 respondees. Not everyone needs to feel compelled to respond to every question, but let's give it a few more minutes so we're certain that everybody knows how to use the system and is logged on correctly. Okay, since this is our warm-up question, I'm just going to give it a few more minutes and I will count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So hopefully with that warm-up question, you've got a good sense of how to use the system. So now our second question is, what council district do you live in? As you can see, District 1 is Harper-Madison, 2 is Fuentes, 3 is Renteria, excuse me. 4 is Kesar, 5 Kitchen, 6 Kelly, Poole, Ellis, Toba, Alter. Or you may say, yeah, I don't really know what council district I live in, or as we've seen in past meetings, you may not actually live in Austin, but we welcome your comments anyway.
The council member number 4 or for District 4 should be Vela. I apologize. I thought I had changed that.
Okay. We will count this one down as well. I see the blue dots have slowed down a bit. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you don't mind, please share your zip code. This is a good way for us to keep track of what portions of the city people are responding from. As you can see, we have a Wordle at work here that shows you in real time where people are responding from. And this will really help us keep track to make sure we're being effective in reaching every part of the city. Okay, we'll give this a few more seconds. Still have some coming in. Okay, I'm going to count this one down now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Now, if you also don't mind sharing, what is your age? We want to make sure that we're reaching out to all age groups across the city, and appreciate your input on this question as well. Still have some comments coming in, some responses coming in. We'll give this a few more seconds. And then we'll count this one down as well. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. What is your gender? Again, trying to make sure that we have a broad section of the community represented in this input. And as you can see, if you'd prefer not to say, you can certainly offer that response. Okay, we'll give this a few more seconds. Count this down as well. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. And now, if you would, what race, ethnicity best describes you? Okay, I'll count this one now too. A few more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. And then, if you don't mind, how did you hear about tonight's meetings? And please select, if you would, all that apply. Is it email or the city website, newsletter, next door, flyers, pop-up events, Facebook, some other method, maybe your neighbors, word of mouth? Would appreciate your input on this question as well. Okay, a few more responses on this one. See, things are slowing down a bit, so I'm going to count this one down as well. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Claire Hempel, who will walk you through these plan concepts and get your input. Thank you.
Hi, well, good evening, everybody. I'm so excited to be at this point of the project with you all here tonight. So these plans, the plan concepts that we're going to show tonight, came together after all of the engagement that we've been doing for over a year now. I want to stress that the plan concepts that we present tonight, we're not asking you which one you like, and that's the one we're going to go with. We're wanting to get your feedback on what elements you like or what resonates with you from each of the concepts as they come together for the final plan. So the concepts that we have tonight are around these 3 themes that you see on the screen. The first one at left is called Stitch. So you'll hear these names as we refer to the concepts throughout the presentation. And Stitch is focused around this idea that Barton Springs Road and some other elements within the park are major dividers for enjoyment of the park. For instance, Barton Springs Road really separates the north and south sides of Zilker, as does Mobile. And so we have a big idea around how to bring those together, including the land bridge. So Stitch is the concept that features the land bridge. Edges is a concept that explores the idea of distributed programming, distributed arrival at the park or at the edges of the park. So you see these dash circles indicating where there's arrival points and gateways into the park. And then regenerate, the third concept at right, is the lightest touch of the three concepts on the park. And this is focused around the idea that the caretaker's cottage and Quonset hut, which used to house the maintenance or will soon no longer house the maintenance facility because it's moving within the park, that is repurposed into a welcome center or visitor hub. Wanted to highlight some elements that are common to all of the concepts. These were really important in the engagement that we've done to date, and we didn't want to parse them out between each of the concepts. And those include rehabilitation of Barton Creek, green stormwater infrastructure throughout, ecological uplift, rehabilitation of the Butler landfill, programming nodes that are connected with pathways or an internal shuttle or a people mover. We're addressing AZ Morton Road. It's quite dangerous today. We're addressing the southern part of the park. And when I refer to the southern part, I'm talking about the part of the park that's south of Barton Springs Pool off of AZ Morton Road, including how people access that area and parking. All of the plans in the final plan will have a balanced water budget, meaning any new areas that are irrigated, we want to make sure that we're being water smart with establishing plans. All of the plans in the final plan will have a universal ADA accessibility and not just meeting baseline standards, but really exceeding those. So that Zilker Park is a park for everyone. And then Zilker Eagle and an internal shuttle routes to move people to and within the park. And we talk about an external circulator as well. So please keep in mind that this presentation and the plans and other supporting material will be available on the website following this meeting for further study and review. Because we have limited amount of time tonight to present these ideas, we will keep moving through the plans, but we encourage you to study them in more detail because there is a lot of detail that we've been working on incorporating into these different concepts. So the first concept is called Stitch, and that's what those the orange lines in this diagram are representing, stitching the park back together. And we are using a land bridge as the central big idea for this proposal to join the north and south sides of the park. So the metric here that you see, the 53%, represents survey responses from community survey number 4 that are in support of the land bridge idea. And you'll see this idea represented throughout all of the slides of the parks. To orient you, here is Barton Springs Road. You can see my arrow, Mopac, and Barton Springs Pool. The land bridge is located centrally within the park, connecting both the north and south sides. A parking garage is integrated with the land bridge structure. It's in the vicinity of number 7, as you see here, thus hiding it from most views. We see that as being green roof and partially underground. A welcome plaza, an entrance point into the park from this area, would emanate from the welcome plaza, relieving parking and congregation pressure from the pool and springs area. So now I'm going to zoom into the park areas more closely, and you'll see a pattern established. I'm going to show what's existing today, and then I'll show the proposed improvements in more detail. So today, the landfill gravel area, you can see here, just north of the the Botanical Gardens. This serves as informal parking and set up for events today. So there was wide support for doing something with the landfill. revegetating it, making it more ecologically responsible than it is today. And so we started this with covering the area with soil so that vegetation can grow. In this concept, we see the landfill area as a small formalized surface lot, part restored prairie and restored woodland. Note that the Stratford Drive realignment happens along the east side of Mopac, between Mopac and the Botanical Gardens. And that means that the Stratford Road alignment as it is today would be closed to cars and open to pedestrians and bikes. The preserve area, the area of Zilker that's west of Mopac, largely remains as it is today, but with improved access and circulation for drop-off and buses, as you can see here, and a new trailhead off of Rollingwood Drive with improved parking. Here's the Great Lawn and Rock Island today. See the volleyball courts to orient you, small parking lots, Barton Springs Road. In the Stitch concept, the land bridge connects to the southwestern part of the Great Lawn, and we tested the idea of a new location for Zilker Hillside Theater, as shown here. There is a new pedestrian entry for the Botanical Gardens. You can see a little hint of that here. And Toomey Road is connected with a pedestrian and bike bridge. And Lunef Road, the loop road where Trail of Light sets up, is closed to car traffic. And it would be open for pedestrians and bikes. So we would leave that road infrastructure in place. It would just be closed to everyday vehicular traffic. In the area south of Barton Springs Road, some of the disparate parking areas are replaced with a more organized area for recreational sports. You can see that here. Today, there's a parking lot, a couple of parking lots in this area. We're turning that back over to park use. Moving on to the polo field area, home also to the Macbeth Recreation Center and the Girl Scout hut or cabin. The polo field has been highly degraded due to the amount of vehicular use that it sees just about daily. In this area, the land bridge and the underground parking, see here, brings visitors to the former polo field as an entry point into the park south of Barton Springs Road. There's a welcome center with a playground on the land bridge, activating this area for use other than simply crossing. The vehicular circulation, it has a change in pattern. I'll point out here, if you can see my cursor, the Andrew Zilker Road and William Barton Drive create a loop instead of connecting. So this gray, this light gray piece you see here, today is Columbus Drive, but we're disconnecting that vehicular drive so that Macbeth Recreation Center and the Girl Scout cabin or Girl Scout hut are accessed off of Mopac Feeder Road. And what this does is open up for people and wildlife better unimpeded connection throughout the park from the creek. At Barton Springs Pool, this is where some of the heaviest visitation happens. There is an existing master plan for the pool. And so this vision plan is focusing on all areas outside of that master plan, but integrating them both together. Here is another view of that loop road I mentioned that would bring people to the pool. So we would keep that parking by the Sheffield Center and the bathhouse. This would be a garage entry by the Moon Tower. And people arriving by car would use this parking garage. The sports complex, see here, and off-leash dog area are located on the current rugby field in place of the surface lots that are there currently. And on the south side of the pool, parking is organized at one point near Umlauf, and there are multiple pedestrian and bike pedestrian bridges to cross Barton Creek on both sides. So to summarize the improvements on Stitch, and you'll see this for the other concepts as well, this series of diagrams breaks down some of the systems. Parking was one of the highest rated concerns for Zilker Park today when we did the previous surveys. So each of the concept plans has a different strategy around parking. In the Stitch scheme, there is one central garage, you see that here, with some small lots around the park. So those are indicated with the P throughout the park. It's envisioned that off-site shared use parking and transit options would need to be utilized to bring visitors to the park. I want to stress that this is a long-term plan and parking would not be removed day one, but would be removed as certain qualifiers are met, like more frequent bus line, the light rail station opens on Congress, et cetera. So where it's feasible for people to more easily take different modes of transportation, including bikes, then that may be the trigger to be able to remove some parking with the result. For Barton Springs Road, in the Stitch concept, in addition to the land bridge, we show raised crosswalks at prominent intersections, 2 lanes of travel each way, and a protected on-street bike lane on each side of the road. In addition, there's a 12-foot shared use path. And it's important for that Barton Springs Road is safe. That has to be one of the things that comes out of this plan. So even if the land bridge, if that were to move forward and funding is far down the road, we want Barton Springs Road to be safe in the immediate future and not have to wait for that land bridge to happen. This is a section that shows the land bridge as if you're on Barton Springs Road looking towards MOPAC. A minimum 14-foot clearance would be needed over the road, and then 3 to 6 feet for the structure, soil to grow the trees and build the amenities, so on. The internal shuttle is shown here in orange, and this would circulate from the parking garage to the Nature and Science Center and the pool. From the pool, you could then hop on the Zilker Eagle to the east side of the park, linking up with the parking near the Botanical Gardens as it heads north along Lady Bird Lake. And this diagram shows the trail and sidewalk network, adding nearly 6 miles more than is currently in the park today. This programming diagram shows the redistribution of program elements centralized from the Welcome Plaza, which you see here in the middle, at the existing polo field. Ecological uplift was rated as a high priority from the survey takers. And in this scheme, we calculate about 84 acres of area that would have ecological uplift, including tree canopy enhancement and green stormwater infrastructure. So you see the legend here are these different color greens that correspond to the map at the right. Here we show a view from what it would look like from the top of the land bridge looking towards downtown. You can see a new playground at the left as the bridge slopes gently down towards the Great Lawn. So following each of these concepts, we'll have some key takeaways as a reminder. And don't worry, you don't have to memorize this list, but we do have a question about what most resonated with you. So things for concept A, or the Stitch concept, are the land bridge, removal of vehicular traffic from Lunef. I won't read every one, but these are some of the most pertinent details from the plan, although we encourage you to continue to review the plans that will be on the project site. So I'm going to ask some questions. If you think back to our guiding principles and goals that we established in the first couple of meetings, we wanted to see with, from your viewpoint, how well does concept A or Stitch achieve the overall guiding principles and goals? I'll read what we have at left. So as you're thinking about that, you can answer. So for the guiding principles, we have guide future stewardship, meaning the plan should be forward-looking and should both embrace challenges and opportunities for future generations to enjoy. We have equity, diversity, and inclusion. So Zilker Park should serve the entire community of Austin and align with programs or align the programs in the park with community interest. For history and culture, the park is a metropolitan park, which has a regional draw and focus. And the plan should treat the park's historic and cultural resources as a valued legacy to be celebrated for future generations. Under nature and ecology, the plan should treat the park as an ecological treasure and recognize the park's relation to water and explore opportunities for interaction with the lake without compromising environmental integrity. Under accessibility, we say the plan should knit the segmented pieces of the park together, ensuring a more accessible, safe, and connected park. North and south sides of Barton Springs Road, north and south shores of Lady Bird Lake, and the east and west sides of Barton Creek, as well as both sides of Mill. And the park should be a place where you can arrive to by multiple travel options. And then finally, under sustainability, the plan should champion sustainability best practices for the park. And Zilker should serve as an example of sustainability, protecting and enhancing our natural spaces and assets. So I know we were about up to 109 or 105 on previous questions. I'll give everybody a few more seconds, but I want to keep this moving so we can make good time. All right, I'll count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'll read these answers to you so you don't worry about having to remember what was on the other slide. But from your viewpoint, what are the top 5 elements that you like from this concept A or stitched concept? So we have the land bridge, the sports complex at the rugby field, which is over there off of Barton Springs Road, and the caretaker's cottage. Removal of cars from Lunef Road, disconnection of Columbus Drive. So that's creating that loop drive off of Barton Springs Road, and Macbeth Recreation Center and Girl Scout Hut would access from the Mopac feeder road. We have ecological uplift of the Butler landfill with some surface lot parking. Barton Springs Road, the section or the cross section that we showed with 2 lanes of traffic each way. This option did not have on-street parking, but could be done within today's curb to curb cut. The off-leash area in the polo field lawn. We have additional pedestrian bike bridge connections across Barton Creek. New location of Zilker Hillside Theater. So this would be on the north side of Barton Springs Road as you're coming down off of the land bridge. We have Stratford Drive being realigned east of Mopac. So between Mopac and the Botanical Gardens, and we would close that current alignment of Stratford to cars, which would be intended for bikes and pedestrians only. And then I'm not sure, I need more time to study the plan. Completely understandable. There is a lot to consider here in all of these concepts. I'll give you a few more seconds to think about this one. We're getting some good responses at about 100. See, we have 164 attendees. All right, I'm going to close this one down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, moving on to our second concept. This is concept B, which we have been calling the edges concept. And we explored what it would mean to distribute programming and nodes throughout the park. Instead of today, there's a lot of intensity around the pool in the spring, understandably so, that's where people want to be. But what if we created places, other places that people want to be at the edges of the park? So with this concept, there are several parking garages at the edges of the park. You'll see those here in green. We have 3. These are illustrated with a green roof, as we see these being designed to be appropriate for a park setting. At each garage or arrival point is a gateway into the park. So by the Butler Landfill Garage, this allows for easier access to the Austin Nature and Science Center and the Botanical Gardens and the Butler Hike and Bike Trail. By the garage near Mopac and Barton Springs Road, there's an active recreation field complex here. And by the garage off of AZ Morton is an off-leash dog area with a playground on the edges of the current lawn today. Here's the existing landfill area today, as we saw in the previous concept. And in the edges concept, this area would have the Zilker Hillside Theater relocated here to the existing Butler landfill area. And this would be nestled into a restored prairie and restored woodland. Stratford Drive is realigned along the west side of Mopac, along the Nature and Science Center side. And we're imagining if the road were able to be aligned here, that a sound wall could potentially be built as part of that project to help mitigate noise that the Nature and Science Center currently experiences. Here's the Great Lawn area today. And in the edges concept, we explored connecting across Lady Bird Lake with a pedestrian and bike bridge. Lou Neff Road, again, is close to vehicular traffic, so no cars, but welcoming walkers, runners, bikers. And there's an all ages, all abilities playground that would be a feature for the park located between the Great Lawn and the creek. Here's the polo field area today. And in this concept, the parking garage near Mopac becomes a major arrival point, and the polo field lawn is restored for a park use instead of parking as it is today. There's a cluster of active recreation fields like baseball, volleyball, basketball. And we also explored how a tunnel, instead of having a land bridge take you over Barton Springs Road, we have a tunnel taking you under Barton Springs Road, which would allow for unimpeded pedestrian and bike connection from both sides of the park. Here's the Barton Springs pool area again today. And in this area of the park, south, we introduce a little more programming with water play and playgrounds in an off-leash dog area into the southern part of the park. And less surface parking, we are removing surface parking lots as they exist today, and putting that parking into a structure that would have less of a footprint. So with this concept, the parking count has a slight increase over what's available today, but all the formalized parking, instead of using the landfill and the polo fields, for overflow lots. So we're shifting that parking that happens today into the structures. And because this is a long-reaching plan, we want to be thinking about, in say 100 years in the future, we're not taking cars anymore. What could those structures be repurposed for? The Barton Springs Road in this concept has 2 lanes of traffic each way, but different from the last concept we showed, this would have on-street parallel parking on both sides of the road. And you see the bus stops are integrated into the streetscape design. So this is a section, if you took a knife and cut Barton Springs Road widthwise, so you're looking towards Mopac, here's how the underpass tunnel would look. And so there would be a minimum 10-foot height clearance, and we would make that tunnel as short as possible so you experience daylight just past either side as you come into the tunnel. This concept envisions a connection from the Austin High area, you can see on the right, to the Great Lawn area, you see on the left, creating another entry point from the north into Zilker Park. The clearance as seen in this section is similar to what you see on Pfluger Bridge today to the east. And a ramp like at the Pfluger Bridge would be needed on the north side so that you would have accessible access to this bridge, because there's a pretty significant grade difference there. The shuttle alignment, similar to the stitch concept, takes riders from the Austin Nature and Science Center here to Macbeth here, and then to the pool with stops along the way. And then you would connect onto the Eagle, which takes you along the creek and then along the lake. The trail and sidewalk connectivity in this concept provides a running loop as represented in this diagram with the dashed line. And you would be able to have continuous unimpeded loop because we have the underpass under Barton Springs Road and no cars. This is a snapshot of the programming within the Edges concept. So we have the sports complex moved closer to Mopac in this one. The Zilker Hillside Theater in a new location adjacent to Lady Bird Lake. And we have supplemented the existing playground, which would be enhanced, with various other options for play. So you can see the all access play near Barton Springs Road Bridge. And we have different play areas in the southern part of the park, and then a nature play that corresponds to the context it's in of Rothafel-Lingwood Drive. With this option, we achieve about 81 acres of ecological uplift, including tree canopy enhancement and green stormwater infrastructure. And this is a view. So I'm closer to Mopac, the botanical garden area, looking towards the lake, towards downtown. You can see the skyline in the back and the seating for the Hillside Theater. This is about what is there today. It looks pretty gentle because this is at a scale where it looks minimal, but this is what is there today. And we would restore the edges that would, with meadow and woodlands that wouldn't experience the regular use of the theater. So here are some of the takeaways from the Edges concept. If you recall, we have parking garages at the edges of the park. We have removal of vehicular traffic from Andrew Zilker Road and several others. This will come up again when we ask the question about your top 5 ideas. So we have the guiding principles and goals question again. How well do you feel this concept or Edges achieves the overall guiding principles and goals? So under guiding future stewardship, equity, diversity, and inclusion, you have history and culture, you have nature and ecology, accessibility, and sustainability. So I'll talk through some of the elements from the plan as we're waiting for some more responses to roll in. This one, excuse me, features parking garages at the edges of the park. We have the Zilker Hillside Theater relocating to the landfill, the current landfill area, And what would happen with the Zilker Hillside Theater area where it is today is would be restored with native vegetation and trees. We also have Barton Springs Road with on-street parking to help offset some of that internal parking that happens today. I'll close this one out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. The top 5 elements from this plan, what resonated with you? So we have the parking garages at the edges of the park, the sports complex at the polo field lawn, the tunnel under Barton Springs Road for pedestrians and bikes. We have removal of cars from Andrew Zilker Road. We have ecological uplift of Butler landfill adjacent to the parking garage and the Zilker Hillside Theater. Barton Springs Road in this concept has 2 lanes of traffic each way with on-street parking on both sides and a shared use path on both sides. We have a pedestrian and bike bridge across Lady Bird Lake, nature playground and a new trailhead on the west side of Zilker. There's an off-leash area near AZ Morton Road and a playground in the southern part of Zilker. We have additional pedestrian and bike bridge connections across Barton Creek on either side of the pool and at Toomey. The new location of the Zilker Hillside Theater being over there by the lake. And we've realigned Stratford Drive on the west side of Mopac, close to the Nature and Science Center, thus turning the existing alignment into a way for pedestrians and bikes to get around. And then I'm not sure I need more time to study the plan. Give everybody a few more moments to consider this one. It's a lot to read through. And these same questions will be available on the website probably during this meeting in case you just want to hold off and think through this some more. I'll give it a few more minutes, or not minutes, moments. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're on to our final concept. This is concept C, known as regenerate. And of the 3 concepts, this one has the lightest touch on the park. The centralized activity in this scheme is at the repurposed caretaker's cottage in Quonset Hut, which better organizes the activities that are already happening in that area today. At a plan view glance, it appears as though not much has changed within the park, but let's zoom in to explore the ideas within Regenerate. Here's the landfill and preserve today. And in this concept, the parking under Mopac is paved to create a small formal lot. The remainder of the landfill area, the bulk of it, on both sides is vegetated with restored prairie and a little bit of woodlands, not as much woodlands as some of the other concepts. The boathouse, you can see this wedge shape here, that is currently located to the west side of Mopac, and we are thinking about relocating it to the east side to serve as a boat rental facility. But this could also be a dock for a potential water taxi that would take you to various stops along Lady Bird Lake. So another opportunity to bring visitors into the park without having to get into a car. Stratford Drive remains in its current alignment. As you can see here, it hugs the botanical garden. But we know that major improvements would need to happen to this road for it to function, not only for cars, but also for walkers, pedestrians, bikes. Here's the Great Lawn area today. We really have minimal changes to the Great Lawn in this concept. The volleyball courts remain. We do take out some of the smaller parking lots that are along Lunef Road, but it would still be open to car traffic and you would still be able to park alongside it, much as it is today. The Butler Hike and Bike Trail would be connected, you see here, at Lunef Point. So instead of trail users having to make the U shape that they have to do today, they would just be able to take this connection to continue along the trail in the lake. Here's the polo field today. And in the regenerate concept, Barton Springs Road would have a vegetated median. So you see this landscape strip in the middle with trees. We have a roundabout where Stratford Drive and Barton Springs Road intersect to help slow traffic down. And in this concept, we do not have any parking garages, but rather distributed surface parking lots, not unlike what is there today, but just better organized around the points where people would want to get out. Here is the pool area today. And the central feature of this concept is this welcome plaza. You can see in this kind of wedge-shaped area. This is the caretaker's cottage and Quonset hut located here. And so we have created terrace stairs that would take visitors down to Barton Creek. And we have created points, design points into the creek so that vegetation and trees can start to reestablish. There's more accessibility to the water's edge. And it just better helps protect both the nature and the people going to this area. Other things to point out is the Zilker Hillside Theater remains in its current location, which you can see here. And on the south side of the pool, we see on-street parking along AZ Morton. And we have a couple of small parking lots within this area. And we've left right field in place with this concept. So the parking in this concept is distributed in small lots and on-street parking throughout the park. Shared use parking garages could possibly be used to help offset peak demand times, in addition to the shuttle and the water taxi. Barton Springs Road in this concept would be reduced to one lane of travel in each direction with on-street parking, which would help slow the traffic down, and improved bus stops with the shared use paths. The internal shuttle alignment utilizes Lunef Road, which you can see here, to make a loop throughout the park, stopping at major destinations and linking up with the Zilker Eagle. With the trail and sidewalk network, this concept would have an additional about 5 miles of connectivity throughout the park. So you see the bridge connection shown in the black arrows, Crenshaw Bridge, the Toomey Road Bridge, and then the small bridges across the creek. And we would have the at-grade crossings here along Barton Springs Road. Programming for the regenerate concept would be concentrated around the new Welcome Center, with improvements made to existing programs like the playground that is in that area today. With this concept, because it has a lighter touch, We have gotten to about 91 acres of ecological uplift in this concept. So that's upland and woodlands, riparian wetland, meadow, and tree canopy tree enhancement, as well as green stormwater infrastructure. And this is a view from Barking Springs. So this bridge that we're looking at doesn't exist today. This would be just outside of Barton Springs Pool. And we connect you to the Welcome Center and the Caretaker's Cottage with terrace steps and purposeful entry points into the water, which you can see here. This would help to protect newly planted vegetation and trees so they can grow to become the next generation's heritage trees. So a few key takeaways from the regenerate concept. Again, we'll ask you the same questions as we have with the other two concepts, but we have the repurposed caretaker's cottage and Quonset hut as the central idea around this concept. The separated bike trail from the Butler Hike and Bike Trail along Lady Bird Lake, the Lunef Point pedestrian and bike bridge, and several others. So you'll see these come up again in a couple slides. So how well does this concept C, or regenerate, achieve the overall guiding principles and goals? We're looking at future stewardship of the park, equity, diversity, and inclusion, history and culture, nature and ecology, accessibility, and sustainability. We'll give you a few more moments for this one. We're getting up to about 100 on some of the earlier questions. All right, I'm going to close this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So what are the top 5 elements that you like from this concept, regenerate? I'll read these off. So we have the repurposed caretaker's cottage and Quonset hut. We have a boardwalk on Lady Bird Lake. We have a separated bike trail from the Butler Hike and Bike Trail. The Lunef Point pedestrian and bike bridge. We have the movement of the boathouse from the west side of Mopac to the east side of Mopac that would allow this to be a water taxi dock as well. We have Barton Springs road improvements. So taking the road down to 1 lane of traffic in each direction with on-street parking. Stratford Road would remain as it is today in its current alignment, but with street improvements, making it safe for pedestrians and bikes. We have an ecological uplift of the Butler landfill. This one would have mostly meadow with some tree planting. It has some surface parking lots, no parking garages. We have improved access points into the water at Barton Creek, as seen in that last rendering. And if you need more time, completely understandable. This will be available on the project website during this meeting. But please do remember to take the survey if you don't get around to answering the questions tonight. We'll take a few more moments. Okay. I'll close this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I wanted to show a few ideas here that could really be mixed and matched with any of the concepts and ultimately the final plan. But we thought they were worth illustrating in their own sections. So this is trail connection enhancement with the Butler Hike and Bike Trail. we are showing a pedestrian path and bike lane here at the top of the hill. So this is in Zilker Park and the Great Lawn. We've got some grade change as we go down to the Butler Hike and Bike Trail, which you see here. The idea here being that those who want to go faster on their bike to get to their destinations could potentially peel off of the Butler Hike and Bike Trail into the park, where you would have a dedicated bike lane as part of the shared use path. The next idea is a pedestrian bridge connection. We're seeing this in approximately the vicinity of connecting the polo field to the botanical gardens, but it really could be in a lot of different places in that area. This we would ensure accessibility by berming up on both sides so that you would have a sloping sidewalk that leads you up to the top. But this would allow for another car-free way to get across Barton Springs Road. And could be a shorter-term solution than waiting on the land bridge if that was the desired direction. Something important to note is that the internal shuttles should be complemented by an external shuttle route. That would really allow for even fewer, for more people to make that choice to not have to drive their car into Zilker to access it. So think something like the Dillo that used to be in Austin. And this is really important as Project Connect moves forward, that we're thinking about connecting to that massive improvement that the city is making. So we're showing two possible alignments, one in navy and one in orange. The one in orange goes along East Riverside Drive from downtown to the Dougherty Arts Center, which is about this location here. And then along Toomey Road with that pedestrian bridge we were showing into the park. And they would then meet up with what could be the internal shuttle route. The navy alignment is along Barton Springs Road and connects all the way along the park into the Nature and Science Center area. So those are some things to think about. I've got a series of questions that we'll ask about just in general, which of the different strategies you liked out of each of these concepts. So the first question we have is about which parking strategy you prefer. And so we want you to list these in order of preference. We have the stitch concept. So we have the central parking garage with small parking lots in some areas of the park in distant destinations. The B concept, or edges, we have parking garages at the perimeter of the park. And then we have on-street parking along Barton Springs Road. So we're keeping a lot of that vehicular traffic outside of the core of the park. And then the regenerate option, or option C, has small parking lots near park destinations, on-street parking along AZ Morton and Barton Springs Road. And with any of these concepts, we're exploring the idea about shared use parking garages too, to help supplement and augment the parking need within Zilker today. I'll give everybody a few more moments to get us back up to about 100 or more answering this question. All right. I'll close this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. We asked about playgrounds, introducing more playgrounds within Zilker. So today you've got the playground that is located at E, very popular, a lot of great memories from people who've been in Austin for a long time here. So we see augmenting that as a playground. We have included some other locations. So A is over in the preserve area. We have another potential location in the picnic area that's over off Rollingwood Drive today. And you can select any of these. We have another playground located at Barton Springs Road, just south of the Botanical Gardens. There's another located at the Land Bridge area. So this would be D, that idea of building the playground to take advantage of the land bridge. E is the existing playground with the fire truck and the dolphins close to the creek. We have new playgrounds located on the south side of the park. And then another new playground over where the Toomey Road pedestrian bridge, if that were to be realized, that would end in this side of the park in Zilker, and we could have a playground on that. And of course, this may not matter to you if you don't have kids or grandkids, but something to think about. It would potentially take some of the congestion out of the central part of the park today if we were to have these uses spread throughout the park. I'll give you a few more moments. Start counting down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, which sports fields locations do you prefer? So today we've got the Wrigley Field, we have volleyball courts, we've got disc golf. They're kind of all over the place today. And in some of the concepts that we explored, we considered putting them in one easy to access location. So that first one being A, by the parking garage off of Mopac Theater in Barton Springs Road. And then in the Stitch concept, we considered locating a cluster of fields over at the existing rugby field, which today has, you can see the gray as parking lots. We would be removing those for more of a park use. Give you a few more moments on this one. It's good to know nobody's a fan of the existing playground and rugby area. We've got one. All right. I'll close this one out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, we tested out some potential new locations for the Zilker Hillside Theater. If you enjoy that in the park, should we keep it where it is, which is A? Or should it belong at the Great Lawn area, just east of the Botanical Gardens? And this would be adjacent to the land bridge. Or could a new home be at the Butler landfill at C? Let this one run for a few more moments. All right, I'll close this out in 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, we talked about water access. So this is Barton Springs Pool is not changing. We're not changing any water access there. This is talking about access into Barton Creek and Lady Bird Lake. So which water access point do you prefer for kayak, paddleboard, canoe? Either you bring your own or it's a rental facility. So we have one, A, this is where the potential Toomey Road pedestrian bridge would extend over and land as an entry point into the park. B is located close to where there's a boat rental facility today. This would be co-located next to the Welcome Center so that you arrive, find out what you'd like to do at Zilker Park for the day. And if you'd like to get into the water, you would just make your way down the terrace steps to Barton Creek and be able to get into the water there. We have C, which is by the Austin Nature and Science Center, close to where it is today. And then D, moving that facility over to the east side of Mopac, next to the, so that a water taxi can also share this dock. All right, just a few more moments. Got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I've got a question about Stratford Drive. So this is the road, if you're not familiar, that hugs along Botanical Garden edge on the east side. What do you think should happen with that? Should we realign it east of Mopac? So it's between Mopac and the Botanical Gardens. And then we turn the existing alignment into pedestrian and bike access only. Or does it make sense to move it to the west side of Mopac next to the Nature and Science Center? Again, this alignment, if we were to do that, makes the existing road pedestrian and bike access only. Or should we keep it in its current alignment and still allow vehicles to remain on it, although with safety improvements that are not there today? Give the group a little longer. Count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, we showed you some ideas about how to more safely get across Barton Springs Road, which is a major divider of the park. So we'd like you to rank these in order of preference. So we have the idea from the Stitch concept of the land bridge. There's an underground tunnel. We have a pedestrian bridge, as you saw in that section. Or is it improved crossings on the street, so at grade? And any of these ideas really could be a combination of how that access is done at the end of the day with Barton Springs Road. All right, I'll give you a few more moments. I have just one more question for you, and I'll talk about next steps and then open it up for any unanswered questions that we haven't got to in the Q&A. I'll close this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Of the concept plans, sorry, I have 2 more questions. Of the concept plans you have seen tonight, which best fits your vision of Zilker Park? Is it the first one, Stitch, Is it B, edges? That's where we had the access at the perimeter of the park. Is it 3, regenerate with the repurposing of the caretaker's cottage and the Quonset hut? Is it a combination of various bits and pieces from the concepts? Or are you really not sure? You'd like to more time to study these plans? Right. I'll close this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then we would love to hear how we're doing. So this is a statement, just respond to how you agree or disagree with the statement. But even though I may not agree with everything in the presentation today, the planning process is going in the right direction. Let us know how we're doing. All right. Just a little bit longer. Close this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we're at our last slide. Next steps. We have our survey live. I believe the link was going to be shared with the group during the meeting. So make sure to tell your family, your friends, your coworkers about the survey. We really want to get a lot of people taking this in all areas of the city. You can always reach out to Greg Montez, who's on this call tonight, at zilkervision@austintexas.gov as an email. And then very important, the project website, which is www.austintexas.gov/zilkervision. And then on our upcoming schedule, our next meeting will be in June. We have not yet decided on a date. We are hopeful that that one may be able to be in person, but stay tuned. The pandemic's thrown us for a lot of loops. And then following that meeting and the feedback at that meeting, we'll be talking about implementation and all that goes along with that. So today we focused on the physical design of the park, but at that meeting, we'll focus on not only the physical design, but the programs, the partnerships, and the policies that will also need to be in place in addition to the projects, as well as cost estimates and phasing. So a lot of those questions that we needed to go through this process to be able to answer and present that feedback to the community. And then following that meeting, we will be moving the draft final report through a series of board and commissions meetings. So that will be happening later this year. We don't have any exact dates for that yet. We will be looking to get on agendas starting likely this summer. So I'm going to stop share and we can get into answering questions.
Thanks, Claire, for walking us through all those things. A lot of the questions have been responded to as we've been moving along. I know there are additional questions and I think some of it will take more time and some questions about specific responses to some of the ideas that have been responded to. I think there's been conversations about concrete and just identifying those pieces and trying to avoid some parks and other parks. And following through, scrolling down now. All right, it looks like conversations around Barking Springs and making it accessible for all folks. Yeah, and then if anybody has any, one of the questions from Anna or Anna, is it safe to put parking on top of the landfill?
Yes, do we have Jonathan Ogren on yet?
I'm here.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think this would be a good one for you.
Well, Anna, the landfill is an older landfill used from the 1940s to the 60s. And so it would not meet current code in regards to the cap on top of it. And if it was used for parking, there would need to be improvements to it. No matter what happens to the landfill, there's likely the need for more study, more evaluation, and more mitigation. One of the big points that I think all three scenarios point out is that 17 acres adjacent to Lady Bird Lake. And as a thriving metropolis and the value of land, that's a public value that we need to take care of and invest in and think about what the future could be.
Thanks, Jonathan. And I see a question here from Tanya. And Tanya, I'm trying to just understand it. I'm going to send you a response and see if you can help me clarify.
I'd be happy to address Sarah Giovanelli's comment as well about Barton Springs. I think the design team is very aware that Barking Springs is an access point for a lot of Austinites. The third scenario really embraces that and puts improvements there. But regardless of what scenario goes forward, we know that more investment needs to be made into the Barking Springs area to make it more accessible and allow people to enjoy that site while taking care of the stormwater issues, the flooding issues, and the trampling issues that are happening there because it's such a used part of the park.
Jonathan, I've got another one for you. And it was asking about the terms, just ecological uplift versus ecological restoration. And I know we've used ecological uplift a lot. And do you want to just speak to that? And then I see some more questions that we can share in just a moment.
So the concepts are very similar, whether you're talking about rewilding, ecological uplift, ecological health, or ecological restoration. And they're really embracing our natural areas as a process, realizing that they've been degraded, not just over the last 5 years or 10 years, but over, say, 150 years since we started using this piece of landscape, since we started using it for agriculture, extraction, and other elements. And so recognizing today when we go there, we're going there to enjoy the site, commune with nature, and what are the elements that we're interested in. And some of those are biodiversity, the plant communities that are native to this area, and the wildlife that is native to this area. In addition, as we go forward and we're grappling with climate change, thinking about climate adaptation and mitigation. So tree canopies is a simple element that allows us to be outdoors and enjoy these areas without being susceptible to the extreme heat that we're going to experience as climate change affects this area more and more. So ecological uplift, ecological restoration allows us to create a more resilient, natural area that we all get to enjoy.
Thanks, Jonathan. I see some other questions. One of the questions Mary Lou Bell is asking is, where would the main entrance be for Zilker Botanical Garden? Would that shift?
Yes, so that's a great question. With the concept where we have multiple concepts. One has structured parking or parking garage, and there's more formalized lots for better access for both the Nature and Science Center and the Botanical Garden. So the Botanical Garden already uses that gateway to the north sometimes for access because a lot of their parking from visitors happens on the existing landfill. And so we see that as becoming more of a main entry And it should be noted that the botanical gardens will be undergoing the next phase of their vision planning process. So the final recommendations that come from the Zilker Park vision planning process can then influence the vision planning process that they will be going through, I think later this year, maybe next.
Thanks, Claire. I know there was lots of interest in the questions around the land bridges and bridges and the underpasses. And then other questions about materials. Do you mind just speaking kind of generally to where we are in the plan as far as some of the, we saw some renderings and some ideas. Can you explain kind of where the next steps would be if we pursued that?
Right. So to get to this point that we are today, we really studied the grades, the contours that are out there to see where it might make the most sense to put an element like the land bridge. We studied precedents such as the Phil Harburger land bridge in San Antonio and the under construction or about to be completed construction of the Memorial Park Bridge in Houston. There are many other examples, but those are a couple that are close to home. So we have some good precedents of how that could be built. Of course, funding is the big question for an element like the land bridge. But if this were an element that were to move forward, we would just dig in a little bit more to those details to see getting the next layer of how do we have the least impact on existing trees and critical environmental features, and make sure that we're getting those ideas really fine-tuned.
Thanks, Claire. And Melissa, I see your comments talking about how is there another planning process and the idea of this vision plan bringing together all pieces of the park. And Claire, do you have a chance to address those questions?
Sorry, what was the question?
So it's just the idea of this vision plan and yet also coinciding with other plans that are ongoing as well, and how you're working those relationships. And then also, I guess it's the idea that we talk about the comprehensive plan for Zilker, and yet we also have these additional plans that we're working with.
Right. So the vision plan for Zilker is looking comprehensively at the entire 350 acres, but there are facilities like the pool area, Barton Spring, the Botanical Gardens, and the Nature and Science Center that are all undergoing their own vision planning efforts, because there's a lot of detail and more immediacy that some of those facilities needed to address that just would not be able to be within the scope of this plan. So we've been working really closely with the Nature and Science Center, both the facility managers and their consultant team, to see what recommendations they have coming out of that vision planning process. We actually have the consultants that were on the Barton Springs pool vision plan as part of our team. And so they're able to bring their knowledge to the project from that planning effort. And then we're at a different place with the Botanical Garden. They have done some community engagement as phase one of their vision plan. And then they're currently fundraising for the second phase of that vision plan, which will be able to take the recommendations that are pertinent to the Botanical Gardens and integrate them as they move forward. So although not, it would have been great to do everything together and to go into that level of detail for these individual facilities. It just didn't occur like that, but we have been in really close contact with all of the different planning teams.
Thanks, Claire. Sorry, I see a question from Clark about asking why were facilities dedicated to natural and cultural heritage preservation not included in the first two options?
It's not that they're not included. We encourage you to review the detail of the plans. If you zoom in, you'll see that there's various areas for different exhibits and learning opportunities scattered throughout the park in each of the options. We welcome your thoughts on how best you see that being integrated into the final plan. What we'll do at our next meeting is also touch on those interpretive stories. We haven't forgot about that. We've been deep in the physical design and planning world, and we know that interpretive planning is going to be an important aspect of the plan, the final plan as we move forward in approvals. So there's lots of opportunities not only to have a facility that is dedicated to that, but also how can we tell those stories throughout the landscape within the park.
Just looking through a few other comments and questions. We've got some questions around the metrics for the needs assessment. Asking, did it start with what the land can sustain versus what people want with the land, want to do with the land? I'm not sure if that's a Jonathan question. That might be a fairly complex question to respond to. Jonathan, do you see that one?
I do see that one. I can start to respond to it. I think the complexity involved with how many people can be on a site and what they do. This is a public park and there's people that are coming here. So how do we accommodate those people in the park? One thing this team has considered a lot is how can we accommodate the popularity of this park while at the same time restoring some of the native plant communities, creating wildlife habitat. There's a couple large reports that are put out associated with this project. One was funded by Barton Springs Conservancy. You can see it on their website. It's a natural resource inventory. And then as part of the vision plan itself, we did a site assessment, which you can see on the Zilker vision plan website. So extensive work in both of those. And we'd be happy to communicate about details in each of those, but those are really looking at the needs assessment. And then again, I think these three options start to address how do we bring so many people into the park, somewhere that so many people love for so many different reasons, and create access for them while they enjoy nature, while they have active recreation and passive recreation. And so that is the goal of this vision plan and this discussion, is to figure out as a community, where can we come to consensus on those ideas.
Thanks, Jonathan. And Nancy is asking about charter buses. Is there room for charter buses to park? And I can't remember if I saw another one about school buses, but thinking through parking of larger people carriers.
That's a really great comment. And we haven't yet gotten to that level of detail of where buses would park, but it is certainly something that we know we need to accommodate for. Nature and Science Center, Botanical Gardens have a lot of that kind of activity coming to and from their facilities, not to mention many of the other facilities in the park. So once we start getting to a plan, more of a final plan, we'll think through the alignments of where those buses would go, how they would drop off, where they would remain while students or the visiting groups is at that facility. But we have been thinking through some of those details, just not at a level we're ready to display for the community yet.
Thanks, Claire. Navigate. Right, I've seen some additional comments, and we're definitely will be reviewing all of the comments as well, and responding to those where we need to. Some questions about just more about surface cover, proposed impervious cover for the three plans, and how that might compare to now. I'm not sure if we're at that space, Claire, does that question make sense to you? Asking total proposed impervious cover added or subtracted per the 3 plans and how it replaces and does this replace current parking lot space?
That's a lot of questions to answer there, but the short answer is yes, we have been looking at impervious coverage calculations. We're again not ready to share those yet. We still need to digest those as a team, but those are numbers that are critical into understanding what is going to be the best solution for Zilker ecologically. And there's regulations. So we have a lot of work to do with watershed protection and other departments with the city, but that is something that we're studying.
It's Claire. Right, I see a question from Jonathan Salinas. How have you all reached out to the east side? Who is on this team? How about BIPOC leadership positions? Jonathan, I'm not sure if you say Jonathan or Jonathan, but thanks for the question. We are keeping track of all of the outreach opportunities we do on the webpage, and the majority of our in-person outreach has been to the east side, districts 1, 2, 3, and 4, where we're doing a lot of in-person outreach. We have several members on our team who are out there and in person. We also, at the start of the Zilker Vision Plan, had some community ambassadors who worked to set up interviews. And then we will be having some additional small groups working with community leaders, focusing on equity and inclusion in the park as well, and having conversations around how do we make Zilker more welcoming for all. So thanks for the question. And then there is the Zilker plan integrating the Zilker rewilding plan, and if not, why not? And are you able to respond to that, Claire?
Sure, I'll start, and then maybe Jonathan can add on to it. We have thoroughly reviewed the rewilding plan. There's a lot of good information within that. That plan is focused on the ecology of the park, and rightly so. There's a lot that can be improved there. I think we're just using slightly different terminology for the plans that are moving forward. So our term was ecological uplift, and we're looking at this holistically. So not just with ecology, but also the use of the park, access, and the programming. So it's not that it hasn't been incorporated. It is definitely within the thoughts of the park, and I hope that the audience tonight was able to see that.
And I'll just reiterate that lots of great information in the rewilding plan. It is baked into the 3 scenarios that you've seen here tonight. It was baked into the 2 previous reports done, site assessments done for this project. And it's something that it sounds like people are interested in, and I'll carry forward. So it allows for more places where we have more ecologically healthy park, and people get to go out and enjoy it. And that begins to mitigate and adapt to climate change in those spaces.
And Jonathan, while you're here, I see Roy just discussing the carbon capture aspect and including that in a bigger part of the discussion.
Definitely. So thinking about those woodland areas, expanding the woodlands in each of those 3 scenarios, expanding the prairies in each of those scenarios creates carbon sinks throughout the park that again do their part for climate mitigation and adaptation as a part of this vision plan.
Thank you. There is a question here from, sorry, it just jumped on me. This is one, I'm sorry, I missed this one from Laura. The idea of water access points to Barton Creek, but I don't care for the paved welcome center version in the slides. Don't we need more wild restoration in the area to shore up and stabilize the banks of Barton Creek? And so it's kind of along those same lines of thinking more specifically along Barton Creek.
Can I answer that one first, Claire? So one of the reasons I'm happy to work with Design Workshop on this project, one of the places that I've loved going many years is Blue Hole in Wimberley. And it was decimated by overuse and just a great place to go swimming. And if you got there first thing in the morning, it was beautiful water, beautiful bald cypress. But by noon, it was a muddy puddle with 50 or 100 of other people who were trying to enjoy the same thing. So recognizing that in some of these overloved areas, we need formal access so we can have that informal or ecological uplift adjacent to it. So the idea of formalizing some of that space, I'm going back to the equity comments that some folks made earlier, allowing more people to have better access to water right there around Barking Springs allows us to restore some of those other areas. So creating implicit and explicit barriers to them getting in those spaces, and we can have riparian restoration within the park while still allowing that formal access and that amazing experience into Barton Creek and other spaces.
Thanks, Jonathan. And there's also a question about why is an environmental impact study not feasible?
I would want to know what that is being referenced.
Okay. So I think, Nicole, if you have additional information. And Robin, I did accidentally click the wrong button on one of your comments about having deeper conversations. I think it's a good opportunity to just acknowledge the incredible complexity of these conversations. And I know there's lots of opportunities to spend a deep dive on every and all aspects. And so continue to reach out to the team and let's see where opportunities can go for us to dive deeper. This one is from Laurie. I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong. Will some of the ecological work also include brush control, especially junipers west of Mopac, Big Firehead may not be water consumers.
So the areas west of Mopac are part of the Zilker Park Preserve. PARD is making a large effort right now to begin managing the preserve areas in some park areas as a more system-based management practice. That's being run by Matt McCall. The preserve is actually one of the most beautiful, most intact parts of the park of the area that we studied. The areas where there are issues are along Eanes Creek, where you have massive erosion issues and you also have invasive species in the floodplain when it gets flooded. But some of those upland areas are actually could be references for numerous restoration projects throughout the city. Juniper has positives and negatives, and the fire issue was something really important to understand. Managing our areas, our open space areas for fire is a critical element. The preserve system is on that and looking at what management is best for that area within the work done for this project. And coming up to this project, that area was considered and thinking about what that could look like. Another real quick reference for that is, again, thinking along Barton Creek. Those areas were cleared. If you look at historic aerials, they were cleared numerous times. And so what we have is on one side, we have a ligustrum forest, and on the other side, we have a hackberry forest. So thinking about restoring those areas, getting more diversity on both sides of Barton Creek, which is a highly used areas. And then again, thinking about that Barking Springs and formalizing a bit of that as well seems critical.
Thanks, Jonathan. It looks like some of the other questions are getting answered as we continue. And it is 7:57, and I want to respect everyone's time. Claire, do you have any additional comments?
No, I really want to thank everybody for sticking around this late in the evening on a Tuesday. So I really appreciate the comments and the questions that we've gotten tonight. We really hope that you spend more time studying the plans and let us know your thoughts and get the word out about the survey. So thank you again. And Ricardo or Greg, I don't know if you have anything else to close out as well.
No, thanking everyone for participating and you know, everyone's ideas is only going to make this plan better. So, and that is our goal. And so thank you everyone for participating tonight and continuing to participate as this process moves, hopefully to a final plan and to public meetings before the Parks Board and to the City Council, before the City Council.
Thank you all.